To order. The agenda will consist of the following this evening. 279-18, ordered that Mayor Stephen L. DiNatale is authorized to execute and deliver a memorandum of understanding between the City of Fitchburg and Fitchburg State University for the preparation and the development of a parking structure as outlined in the enclosed order. And 280-18, ordered that Mayor Stephen L. DiNatale is authorized to execute and deliver a memorandum of understanding between the City of Fitchburg and Fitchburg State University for a joint parking study as outlined in the enclosed order. And item number 3 is a City Hall renovation update. Councilors present this evening: Councilors Walsh, Clark, Caddy, Zarella, Boschman, Squalia, Green, DiNatale, Fleming, Donnelly, and myself, President Kush-Merrick. We also have an individual conducting audio and video recording this evening at this time, and ask for that person to introduce themselves.
Yes, hi. My name is Dan Frank. I'm an adjunct faculty at UMass Lowell and also a master's student at Emerson College, and we have been making a documentary about the 3rd Congressional District election for the last 5 months or so. And let's see. We have been focusing on the Walshes, and we'll be at the City Council meeting tonight and then at the school committee meeting in another month. There is nothing that we are doing here that will be used for political purposes, marketing, promotion for any particular cause or person. This is strictly a documentary film.
Great. Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else in the audience wishing to conduct audio or video recording at this time? Seeing none, I will now flip this over to A.J. Terigny, Chief of Staff.
Thank you, Mr. Council President. Mr. Mayor, I believe you have a few welcoming remarks before we begin.
Mr. Terigny. Good evening, councilors, members of the public. I am very excited to have our City Hall project team present to you this evening a culmination of months of work and effort and man hours. Before we begin, I would like to thank certainly our building committee that's provided valuable input and advice since the beginning of this project with the commencement of the feasibility study, and believe it or not, almost 2 years ago. How time flies. I would also like to thank our designer architects, Icon, they're here this evening, provided unique ways to approach this project. And I can't stress enough about the elegant and creative ways that they have presented to us how they're going to tackle some of those challenges that exist when you're dealing with a building that's over 150 years old. So we couldn't be happier about that. And again, they had the presentation skills to really knock it out of the park, and that's why we chose them, and they've been delivering ever since. I'd also like to thank our owner's project manager, and you'll be hearing from Tony tonight, Colliers International, who have helped to keep this project on its tight schedule, as well as served in a crucial role with keeping this project, not the least of which, on budget. Let's keep that ever foremost in our minds. Finally, I'd like to thank our neighbors, Rollstone Bank, Centros Las America, and Fitchburg State University, have all been very helpful and partnered with us throughout this process. Thank you. Mr. Terigny.
Thank you.
Good to go. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Mayor, Council President, City Councilors. Welcome, and thank you for having us this evening to present informational update on the City Hall project. You'll hear from me tonight as Colliers, as the Mayor said, owner's project manager. I'm going to introduce to you the Icon team represented tonight by Ned Collier and Mark McKevitz. Also with us tonight is Bond Brothers. They have recently been chosen as the construction manager, so they will be responsible for all of the construction efforts on site, and they're represented by Ken Johnson and Dave Capaldo. So for those of you who do not know what owner project manager means, yes, the mayor says we watch the dollars, and that's certainly key and paramount on most public projects. But we're also responsible for taking the building committee, working with the building committee, the purchasing, as well as many other administrative functions in the city, working through the Chapter 7 and Chapter 149 requirements of Mass General Law, which Massachusetts has some of the most strict public construction laws in the state. We do that in a manner in which we are always cognizant of dollars, schedule, overseeing designer selection, which is one procurement method, procurement process, as well as the CM at risk, which requires a special selection process. So we worked with the building committee, focusing on all those efforts, and we report to the building committee and to the city on all of those aspects. Continuing into construction, which we will be embarking on in the next couple months, the owner project manager provides a function typically known as clerk of the works. It's a little bit more than what the older style clerk of the works used to provide, and it's really a more comprehensive construction administration. And it goes from the beginning of construction to move in furniture, fixtures, relocation, any of those items that typically would fall back on the municipality, in this case, the city. We will be responsible for everything to relocating out of 166 Boulder Drive and into the new and really newly established City Hall. So where have we been? Where are we going and where are we headed? When we were brought on board in March of 2018, the city had laid out a roadmap, and it stands in City Hall now in the break room. And we've been plodding along that course, traveling down the road of success. Took about a month and a half to get Icon on board. They began their programming, which you're going to hear a lot more in detail, but really meeting with every single department head, everybody that we could talk to within City Hall, managing that process. So as they started to dig into what does City Hall really need, what does the design need to accomplish, and what does that need to entail, we turned our project management focus back to the building committee and the process of CM selection, which is an ongoing process for quite a while, as you see, since maybe June through November, when we ultimately made the final selection process. So there was 6 months of some really intense work to get us to where we are today, and I hope you'll be pleased with where the design is today compared to where it was in the beginning. It's kind of migrated and shifted a little from the initial feasibility study, but we did that, and we've made those adjustments based on how do we save time, how do we save money, how do we deliver the best value in a completed project to the city. And so we think those changes have been very good changes along our road here. Demo, as I said, is slated to really start in the next couple months. February, we'll be in there doing limited abatement. There's some hazmat material within the old building that needs to be cleaned up. We'll be doing exploratory demolition to allow structural engineers, mechanical, electrical, plumbing engineers to really get into the inner workings of the buildings. What's behind the walls that we don't see, what don't we know about? As many of those things as we can uncover now will result in less change orders, less scheduled delays, and less impact later down the road. Our schedule is September of 2020 to have everybody in the building. Construction complete, vacating 166 Boulder Drive, and having a nice grand opening, ribbon cutting, dedication, and everybody leaves happy. And hopefully we return some valuable dollars to the city, under budget and on schedule, right? That's the goal. So far, we're hitting our marks. So, financial status, because it's driven in me every step of the way and every day. We hear about 23 and a half, 23 and a half. It's kind of like 23 and me, only different. Project budget is on track. We've been at this now for a while, and the big kind of impact or item that has occurred within the budget is transferring the dollars that were earmarked in the feasibility study for the parking deck, really, and putting that money into City Hall based on the cooperation and joint venture that you will hear about in the parking structure with Fitchburg State in a little bit. Contracts have been let for OPM, which is why we're here. Designer selection is contracted, all of which are hitting budget or slightly under. We completed a survey contract to have the entire block resurveyed, all of the underground utilities. Again, everything we don't know about, title search for the property making sure that everything we touch is owned by the city, making sure that our plans that you're going to hear from Icon on are all being designed with absolutely the most recent information. And in that title search, it's recent information today that's gone back many, many years in the title search to make sure all of our deeds, all of our bounds, all of our easements and restrictions have been identified. We recently signed a CM at-risk proposal, contracted with them for just some very early limited stage until we get the project further along. Design development, which is a phase of design, really a comprehensive completion of design documents, not fully constructible yet, but design development went to the estimators yesterday, and we expect to have a estimate reconciliation between ourselves, the architect's estimator, and the CM. So all three of us get in a room and we reconcile. You think it costs $2 to paint the wall, we think it's $2.50, they think it's $2.25, and we nail down what our thoughts are, and we come out of that room a day later with a number that we all agree we can deliver you this project for. And that will happen on January 22nd. Bond Brothers, and I'm going to let them speak a little bit about their experience, but the process of CM at risk is a special process through the state. It's available for projects greater than $5 million that have some complicated nuance. If you were building a brand new city hall on a vacant site and there was no other restrictions around, they would probably say just design, bid, build. This, we approached the state and said, we've got complicated site, we've got multiple buildings, we've got constricted site, we've got urban areas that we're working in, and we'd like to go CM at risk. We've got a schedule that certainly by bringing the CM on board now, we can kind of order long lead items, mechanical equipment, windows, elevators, things that would normally take time, we'll be able to advance order, all of which benefit our dollars because we're not paying for them escalated costs 2 years from now, and they benefit our schedule because by the time we're in the building and working on those elements, they'll be ready for delivery and installation. It's also a qualification based. So when you hear people saying, oh, public process, we were dealt a low bidder that was semi-qualified. Ours was qualification based selection. Started off with 8 firms, got down to 4, got down to 3, and selected Bond, and you'll hear from them in a minute or two. We engage them during the design. That's a big benefit to the project. They get engaged at this point with our architect, figure out how do they see building it, where do they see staging their equipment, where do they see laydown area, where do they find efficiencies in design and construction before our design team goes too far ahead. So they're working in conjunction to develop early construction packages, so we're able to get a jump on the demolition and some of these early scopes while our design team continues on with the project. So at this point, I'll ask Ken to talk a little bit about Bond Brothers and their role in our project.
Sure. Good evening. On behalf of Bond Brothers, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here and to join your team. My name is Ken Johnson, and I'm the Vice President of Bond Brothers Building Division. I'll be serving as your principal in charge, and I'm here to pledge the resources of our company to ensure that you have a successful outcome. And Tony has been very good about drilling in that we have a very firm fixed budget, and we're going to make sure that we maximize the value for you in delivering that budget and delivering the project as well. Joining me tonight is Dave Capaldo. Dave is going to be serving as your project executive, so he'll be here pretty much on probably almost on a daily basis. Pretty close. He'll be checking in with the team all the time. We'll have a full-time on-site project manager as well as full-time on-site project superintendent and support teams here. So we're just getting started. We're really excited about being part of the team. Thrilled to be here. This is a project that we really, this is the stuff that we wake up and get out of bed for in the morning. Very challenging renewal and repurposing of something that I know is going to deliver quite a bit of civic pride in downtown Fitchburg.
Just echoing Ken's sentiments, we are really delighted to be delivering this project for you. I'm looking forward to managing our on-site team, making sure that they have the resources and everything they need to successfully do that for you. So can't wait to get started.
Excellent. And with that, I'll turn it over to Icon to really get into the meat and potatoes of the design.
Here we
Good
go.
luck.
Thank you. Again, my name is Ned Collier. I'm the principal in charge with Icon Architecture. Mark McKevitz is a project designer with the firm, and he and I work very closely on institutional projects of this nature. Tony kind of stole my thunder in talking about the number of meetings and constituents that we talked to, but we thought we might list it for you just to make it particularly impressive. There are 14 departments in the building. We have met with all of them 3 times. Twice, 2 of those times have been with the department heads. One has been with staff, as the department head chose to participate in the meeting. In addition to that, we have met with the fire department and the police department. Of course, it's a public building, so safety and security are paramount issues. We've met with Public Works in terms of the site development for the project, and then other stakeholders such as yourselves include the Office of the Mayor, the Disabilities Commission we sat down with, the state delegation, the neighbor, Central Las Americas. We've met preliminarily with the Planning Board Chair, the bank, Unitil, as well as Fitchburg Access TV, because they will play a role in the development of the council chamber for the project.
So we started off with programming, as Ned has said.
You're not intended to be able to read this, don't worry
So,
about it.
so the programming was looking at what the previous study determined, and then sort of doing a check on that, and also learning the way that the city works, and the way that the different departments work, the way that people work together. And so from the programming, we moved on to understanding on a day-to-day basis who works with whom. And while this may be a little bit, I don't know, crazy looking,
It's fine art.
the way we developed this was in our interviews with people we asked on a day-to-day basis, who do you work with the most? And so places like the auditor and the office of the mayor, who have a darker, thicker line with 2 dots at either end, they both said, yes, we work with this person a lot. And then there are other arrangements where, for instance, veterans and the treasurer, where veterans said, we work with the treasurer, and the treasurer didn't say that they work. So it's sort of the unrequited love connection.
It's one of their top 3.
Yeah. So this helped us to determine who should go where. And again, this was a day-to-day thing. And so there are instances where nobody mentioned that they needed to be near the council chamber. There were some people that said they needed to be near a conference room, but then there were conference rooms that that could float. And so the other thing that I just wanted to quickly say about this is that each dot is scaled to the amount of square footage that the department needs within the building. So
it's really a way for us to visualize relationships, because when we go into 3 dimensions, that becomes particularly important. We're dealing with an existing building with a limited number of floors, and getting departments and individuals next to one another who have expressed a desire to be next to one another becomes a real 3-dimensional puzzle problem. And to make the effort even more exciting, there wasn't one person that we met with who didn't ask for a window. So it's a very reasonable request, except that we're dealing with a 165-year-old building. So part of what helped us is the project had been framed in the feasibility study as a campus. And we really wanted to be able to take advantage of what a campus entails, which is building programs working in concert with one another. And I mean, I have to say, if anyone's worked with an architect, we're somewhat notorious for not being able to come into a room without rearranging the furniture. We did some of that. And probably the biggest piece that we rearranged was the recommendation we made to the building committee to locate the council chamber in the 700 Main Street location. And hopefully when we're done, you'll see why we think that was a good idea. And it does relate back to that relationship diagram where on a day-to-day basis there was a fairly strong web of interaction among the departments and much less so with the council chamber, which also occupies a very large piece of square footage. Additional things that are going on around the site, the Fitchburg State University is looking at renovating the Fitchburg Theater. There may be an addition associated with that. And as mentioned in the opening, they are looking at constructing a parking structure directly opposite from City Hall. You want to chime on this? Yeah.
We're going to leave you on a quick cliffhanger on the design concept so that we can have an opportunity to explain the two MOUs that are on tonight's agenda, which will help you understand the presentation as it goes along. I would like to bring you back a few months ago when the City Hall Building Committee was conducting interviews to hire a design team. 4 design teams were interviewed who all expressed great interest and excitement to participate in the City Hall renovation and made it known that the budget that was appropriated was acceptable and for the project size. During the interviews, the building committee asked challenges we should take into consideration of the overall project. They all shared concerns about the parking structure and that the building committee should explore alternative and unique solutions to address parking needs. There were 4 concerns that they all suggested. The first was that the parking structure is a unique shape and would most likely not be suitable for a precast parking structure. It would need to be custom made. The second, there would be 2 levels of access: Boulder Drive access and access that meets the grade of land directly behind City Hall. The third, it's within the floodplain. And the fourth, existing footings and foundations from the previous parking structure would need to be removed and replaced. I'm pleased to inform you that Icon was the only architect that offered a tangible and practical solution during the interview process and was one of the many reasons why Icon was hired to be part of the Fitchburg team. Icon realized the redundancy that would be created for parking if both the university and the city built parking structures, a parking structure directly behind City Hall and one adjacent to the theater block. It was suggested that the city either enter into agreement with the university and investigate the probability of building a joint parking structure or an agreement to lease spaces from the university. The building committee reviewed the proposal and recommended the same to the mayor and asked that he meet with the university. The mayor spoke with Dr. Lapidus and Jay Bry about the idea of partnership and came to the conclusion that it would be best for the city and university to enter into an MOU for future lease of parking spaces for a parking structure that will be built and owned by the university adjacent to the theater block. This is yet another example of the university and city working together to further both our causes and the positive development of Fitchburg in our Main Street corridor. This unique opportunity also brings value dollars back into the City Hall project and alleviates potential financial stress on the overall project. The second MOU on tonight's agenda is to enter into a joint parking study with Fitchburg State, which will help answer many questions that the City Hall Building Committee, the mayor, university, and I'm sure the council has. The parking study will analyze the parking inventory, our written parking policies, procedures, and fines, historical parking information, the city's economic strategic plan, the projected use of the parking structure, and etc. Not only will this data help us all understand the expected size of the parking structure and contents of a negotiated lease, but it will also help identify overall parking solutions for the Main Street corridor. The expected timeline for the completion of the study is midwinter. The total cost of the parking study is $50,000, with the city and university each paying half. The appropriation for the study is already funded and part of the overall City Hall project. The expected timeline of the proposed parking structure is to be built within 2 years after the completion of City Hall. The city will utilize the parking study and the developing design plans to determine options for constituent employee parking for the 2 years during which the parking structure is being built. It is extremely important to note that the mayor and the building committee focused in on the whereabouts of local parking that can be utilized during this temporary time. It was realized during discussions that between private and municipal stakeholders, there is an abundance of local parking that can be utilized. This is an evolving conversation that will continue throughout the construction process, but we are confident that an achievable solution will be found for this temporary situation. And the graph that Ned had quickly posted up there for you all is just an example of overall parking within the Main Street corridor that is a walkable distance from City Hall. So our parking consultants, Walker consultants, will be utilizing their own traffic counts and such to determine and help us create a temporary means of parking for those 2 years.
So zooming into the specific limit of work for the City Hall campus project, I've had a kind of career-long interest in the architecture of democracy and what do buildings in the United States that serve democracy look like. In New England in particular, the precedent for the town hall, which often gets confused as a Greek temple, is not in fact a Greek temple, it's a house. So we talked about, as early as our interview, about how do we bring City Hall back to all? You know, what is a City Hall for all? And part of that was we wanted to look for ways to return the front door to its prominence as the singular entrance for all members of the public. And there are a number of problems that get associated with that, not the least of which are the flights of stairs going up to it, as well as the fact that the front of the building and the stairs have been changed several times over the course of the building. And as we get into the project, we'll explain how we took this program, this kind of three-dimensional program, and organized it around giving primacy to the public in the building while serving all of the departmental needs at the same time.
So while programming was going on, we were also measuring and documenting the building. The measuring is pretty straightforward and going in the building and understanding as much as we can in terms of structure, in terms of materials. But then there's the documentation part that's also understanding the history of the building and how it got to be the way that it is now. So we all know that the building started in 1853 as a pretty simple building. It was offices down, and up top was an auditorium. And then in 1879, the addition, we came to learn via the state archives that the addition was primarily actually a stage. And it was support for that stage that was in the addition. And some of the offices in the first floor were changed during that time. And through our research, through drawings from 1909 and 1933, it was over that time and then into the 60s as well that the second floor ballroom, the ceiling that's there now for the offices is actually hanging from the structure above and is set on a series of wood trusses. And also during that time was when the dormers got introduced to the 1879 portion of the building, and it went from being 3 stories to being 4 in order to fit all of this. So it's all of these changes in such a quick amount of time. Talk about what an economic powerhouse and the growth that Fitchburg experienced from, the 1850s till the 1930s. This building went through a ton of changes. And so each floor it reveals different things. And in the basement, we have we're primarily trying to keep these vaults, which are right here and here.
We should back up just a little
Yeah.
bit, and architects are somewhat like anthropologists too. So it's important for us to understand the history of the building so that as we begin making the current modifications, we're doing it with intelligence. What are those things that were done that need to be undone? What are those things that remain that need to be preserved within the building? So this is somewhat, the prior slide is somewhat of an imaginative recreation of the history of the building, which we're going to continue imagining and recreating as we go along. But hopefully you'll see, as we're developing it, the fruits of that reconstruction of the history of the building will bear out, both financially and spatially for the building occupants.
Yeah. That was very eloquent.
Well, thank you.
In general, there are many, the basement served as coal storage. It has provided, there are sloped walks everywhere down here. But there are, sometime in the early 1900s, the first vaults went in, and those are 6-hour rated, which means that a fire could burn for 6 hours and the temperature on the inside would not raise enough to do damage. And those are still mandated by the state. We are still mandated for all municipalities to maintain 6-hour rated enclosures for records that that are permanent. So we have, since sort of in keeping those, we're also trying to create a navigation on every floor, in the basement included, that makes sense. And so in this, we are providing at the rear sort of a racetrack, and then at the front, we're providing a up the gut central
The long and the
circulation.
short of the vault story is, instead of demolishing everything in the basement and installing a new 6-hour vault at great expense to the project, because there's only one person that manufactures them, we have spoken with the state archivist and gotten approval to retain the existing vaults. So the modifications to the basement in a drawing, look fairly minimal. In reality, they're quite substantial, because there'll be new systems, new lighting, new floors, and every department in the building has dedicated basement storage space.
On the first floor, as we have stated, we want, our biggest goal is to reinvigorate the entry, to provide eyes on the street, to provide action on Main Street. And so we want to recapture the entry. This pretty much represents how the 1853 building existed, with again, the central circulation with rooms on either side. We are preserving that, but we are also opening it up so that it is a more grand, more gracious entry. And then as you went to the back, again, that was support for the stage. It has been broken down into very small office spaces. We're looking at reorganizing that and keeping the central axis as the main circulation spot. As you come up, the second floor has been, again, has gone from a grand ballroom down to office space and in the rear. And we are looking to bring the building, the edges of the building in, so that the perimeter serves as circulation, light, and air for everybody. And then in the rear, we start to introduce more smaller office spaces. And this is, we believe this photo to be around 1895. So this is what the second floor ballroom was like post. You can see back here, there was the stage. Also, there was a perimeter balcony that went all the way around. And at some point, it went from plasterwork to pressed tin. We don't know the date on that, but that's what we had previously.
And the key point is we're looking, and our colleagues at Bond mentioned the exploratory demolition phase, as to whether we can preserve some of the remnants of that original auditorium, particularly the large, enormous plaster cove, which is largely intact, just hidden by a lot of, we think, early 20th century pressed tin.
The third floor primarily is the roof, or the ceiling for the second floor, and then again, cellular office space in the rear. We're looking at inserting a third floor into this building that doesn't exist. So it allows us to, by adding this 4,500 square feet, it allows us to provide a more gracious circulation space, a more gracious entry. And then the fourth floor, at the rear is offices, and at the front is attic space. We're looking at, because we are bringing that third floor to the front, creating a mechanical space at the rear.
So that will actually allow those dormers that got added on to be removed and the original roof line restored at that point. So the mechanical space will literally be in the attic of the building. Also makes the building more navigable because you're not having to move through 4 stories. And we haven't mentioned, but the floors that are now currently offset will all be connected by internal ramps, so that you have 1 second floor, 1 third floor, and they are fully accessible to people of all abilities. City Hall for all, again.
So these are the larger plans, and again, the lobby is larger. We have a control point here that will allow, in 2 toilet rooms, which will allow for the front meeting rooms to be used for public meetings, that this can be closed down at night and this can still function. And then as we move back, in the previous diagram that had all the circles and lines, there were what we refer to as the big 5 departments, and they're not only big in terms of the amount of square footage that they take, but they're big in terms of their function within City Hall. So we kept those as close to the public as possible. So we have the clerk, treasury, and the assessor all on this floor, along with purchasing, recreation, and veterans. And this was originally just a stair hall in the 1879 edition. We are going to maintain the existing entries for City Hall staff only, and then it will be opened up as a major circulation and waiting space. So this is potentially the entry to City Hall. And this is the entry from the west looking up. We are providing an opening that will allow views and sunlight, daylight into the entry. And then this is the rear corridor that we are opening up that used to have stairs. So on the second floor, we have the other 2 of the big 5, which is Department of Buildings and the Board of Health. And also to note is that we've provided the circulation at the front of the building so that, again, we can have control points here, and you can circumnavigate this building, or this chunk, down ramps and to the rear, which is the auditor facilities and sort of amenities for people that work there, which is the break room, the mail room, and a large-scale copy print.
And the space at the front of the building is a public gallery, which will be used by the art museum, other functions, community functions.
So this is from the second floor at the entry looking down and looking across Building Department and Board of Health.
So from the public's perception, the part of the building that they're accessing is just this front part, and everything that they need is right in the front part of the building.
And then we have pulled this mass into the middle so that we are respecting the windows at the perimeter, which are 12 feet high and 4'6" wide. And so by doing this, it allows us to give everybody access to daylight and views that works within this space. So there will be a layer of window within the offices, and then there will be a window to the exterior. This also assists in controlling temperature and HVAC systems, so there's a plus for that as well. And as you can see, we are looking to maintain and, where necessary, rebuild the existing cove at the perimeter.
So that for the first time in many decades, you'll actually get the sense, without wasting space, of the original auditorium volume. And the window thing isn't insignificant. There are a limited number of building windows in the facade of the existing building. We can put a lot more windows in this blue box than we can on the outside of the building. So everyone really does get a window.
And then on the third floor, we are providing the largest conference room right off of the main circulation, along with a ramp and a large public space that connects the two levels of the third floor. Again, around the perimeter, it's open. And in the rear, we're sort of calling that aspirational and forward-looking, where we have the mayor planning, development, and the state senator and state representative. And then before that, we have sort of, again, nuts and bolts administration for the city. And then this is the large training room on the third floor. We are looking to reuse the existing Oculus window that is at the very front top of the entry pediment. And so this cone will go up and sort of grab that, filter light down in.
This was, oddly enough, the one room that didn't have a window. So we just sort of reached up and grabbed it. So in terms of what we came to call the legislative building, so the original City Hall is serving all of the administrative functions. The 700 Main Street building would then serve the legislative functions. What we really valued in seeing that space is, one, it has a very high level of finishes in it already that would be very difficult to duplicate. It had a volume, meaning of ceiling height and floor area, that could best accommodate the large footprint of the council chamber, along with the level of flexibility that space will ultimately require, and we could provide some dedicated public space associated with that as well. One of the things that we're really just starting to look at is the council table itself. It's in a horseshoe configuration in this case, and one of the concerns that we had with that is that it takes up the majority of the room in that configuration. So we know you want that configuration, and you can have that configuration. But we also, so this is sitting behind that desk, looking out through what is currently an arched entrance. We're actually suggesting that the inner door of that building is glassed in. There may be a large logo etched on the glass, the city seal, for example, and that the entrances into the space are actually off the kind of long lobby at the front of the building. The other elements that you're seeing in the space are the existing coffered ceiling that's in there, which has these long linear skylights over it, and we'll be working to relight the space so that it's generously lit. You're also seeing at least suggestions of flat screen monitors that would be on the opposite side of the room from the council, so that whatever is being projected behind you, you're able to see without having to constantly turn around and look at the screen. So here again is looking back toward the screen behind the council table. So what we're thinking about in order to give the room greater flexibility is that the outer wings of the table will actually pivot. So that in its standard configuration, it's a horseshoe shape, but if you're anticipating, for example, a larger crowd, you can flatten the table out and add more seats in the space. The little white thing there is just the suggestion of a lectern in the middle of the space. The flanking spaces, by the way, are, so this is all the lobby, and the thinking is the lobby could function as a kind of breakout space, public restrooms, and a caucus room in the upper corner. So this is looking at the room with the council table somewhat flattened out. And I should say the beauty of this is this is like a found object. You know, it's an amazing ceiling that we think works better as a council chamber than it ever did as a bank, I'm sure. And then finally, and this is speaking to the degree of flexibility, with the table in a kind of flattened curve, we can fit roughly 100 people in a standard presentation mode within the space. And that might look something like that. So there would be the projector associated with the council, and then a secondary projector and screen on one of the side walls, so that when you use the room for its largest capacity, it has the same flexibility. That's our presentation. Questions? Yeah.
Of course, I would only defer to the council chamber portion of the discussion, that it would be important for not only viewership, but for our own benefit with the sound, taking into account that there are times, even in our discussions here across this configuration, that some of our senior members can't always hear what's being said, and it is difficult when you have a large audience like this, you know what I mean, to be heard if there's, you know, discussion happening out in the audience as well.
So we have both an AVIT consultant and an acoustician
Okay.
who will be working on the project to ensure that isn't a problem. In addition to that, because of the size of the potential size of the audience, we'll also have assistive listening for anyone who's hearing impaired.
Okay.
Within space.
My only other question would be, is there going to be a buffer zone from when you enter on the two sides? Is there any sort of a glass break or anything in there that would buffer a hallway conversation before they're actually into the chamber itself?
Yeah, they're actual doors.
Okay.
Into the chamber. So if somebody's standing in the lobby and having a conversation, they're acoustically separated. One of the things that we were kicking around earlier is whether you might in fact want flat screens within those lobbies as well, that are simulcasting what's going on.
Yes.
On the inside.
My vote would be a yes to
Yeah.
that.
Councilors, I realize there's going to be a number of questions, particularly on the council chambers. I just wanted to make you aware that both myself and Councilor Donnelly serve on the City Hall Building Committee, representing council concerns and perspective, particularly around the council chamber. And then Anna Farrell and myself met extensively with the team to talk about the actual needs of the council from a technology standpoint, from a audience standpoint. So many of the concerns that you may have, I don't want you to think this is the first time or this is your only opportunity to bring it up. It's we tried to flesh out a lot of these AV needs and convenience needs for both counselors as well as the public. That said, I have Councilor Zarella.
Thank you. First, I just want to say I love the design. I'm really looking forward to seeing it come together. One question, just because it's sometimes a little hard to tell with the computer drawings, what parts are sort of what you see is what you get, and what parts are just kind of roughed out to give an idea of what it's going to look like. What kind of aesthetic are we considering here? Are we looking for a very contemporary look, or more of, preserving the kind of...
So we're just now getting to that kind of question. The model represents sort of the massing, the spatial arrangement. The colors that we've used are simply to help make the model read better, not any kind of final selection or recommendation even. Our hope is that the exterior will be treated as a full historic restoration to the degree that it's possible. The windows will be historically correct. As we mentioned earlier, the eave line will be restored. There will be a significant amount of work on the brick and stonework on the exterior, and the main entrance will be. We can't match exactly what was there before in terms of the entrance stair because it wasn't accessible and things have changed in the meantime. But it is inspired by that. Once you enter the building, we're aspiring to a contemporary aesthetic on the inside. We want to keep the wall, the sort of existing exterior wall, so to speak, kind of clean. There's not much left on the inside of the building. It's had a tough life over the years, and I think that's why we tended to focus on the big cove, because it still exists.
Right.
And we're interested in seeing when the tin comes down, is there any trace of the kind of patterning that we saw in the 1890s photograph. But the simple answer is we'd like to see the interior contemporary.
Okay. Yeah, it's absolutely, either way is by no means a sticking point for me. I love the design. I'd just like to put in one probably minority vote for a more old-fashioned aesthetic. I'm a sucker for the history of it. But the only thing
I would say to that is it feels a little disingenuous to us because we would be making up a history.
Makes sense.
There is no history there to draw on, and in fact, if you talk to people in historic societies, they would prefer that anything new is clearly new.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. All right. The only other question I wanted to ask was just for the benefit of the public, because I've asked about this before, and I think it's something people will want to know. Could one of you explain the benefits of the CM at risk process?
Did you rehearse that well, Tom?
I have notes.
Stack of notes.
Not all for here. That's the one you really want to see. And that's really the benefit of CM at risk, for those of you that didn't see it. The whole process is state regulated. The benefit is when you have a complex project, as we have here, where you have multiple buildings, sites, moving parts, constricted laydown area, we start to look at the logistics. So on a larger empty site, you would say contractor pulls in their typical construction trailers. You've got big laydown areas for steel, brick, masonry, other construction trailers. It's a clean job. Your schedule is 2 years. You've got plenty of time to let the design do its thing. They'll be done in March, April. If you were then to put that out to bid, it's probably 2 months in the state for a bid process. That means May, June, You're signing a contractor up in July, August. September 20th became kind of really unrealistic. We also know there's a set budget that was developed from a feasibility study 2 years ago, which would be 4 years from construction date. Escalation and the construction economy that we're in, we started to look at all those factors and said, hey, let's give this a shot. We'll apply to the state. If we get CM at risk, great. We can cut off escalation by 1.5 years. We can get a contractor on board now that says, I'm going to use Boulder Drive for storage. I'm going to use some office space downtown and kind of start to put all those logistics together with the idea that we get to share in those costs as opposed to contractor gives you a bid, you don't know where he's buried stuff. The CM at risk process is an open book accounting. So we really all get to develop and see those costs and share in the savings of those costs back to the city. They don't just evaporate because the low bidder did a good job on his bid and he keeps all the profits. Ours is more of a shared and open book accounting. Does that help?
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay.
I knew I'd get a question on it, and I figured you'd explain it better than I could, so I hope. I appreciate it.
Counselor Squalia.
First of all, I like the design. It looks very nice. I like the preserving of the exterior while you're able to have a conditioned space on the inside, and then you're not screwing around with the exterior windows. But beyond the design, my question was largely on the parking structure. From the slide, it looked like $1.52 million is being taken from the budget for building the parking structure that was in the original layout, and adding that approximately $500,000 to 700 Main Street. So 700 Main Street would be $1.2 million now, and adding $1 million to the City Hall. And so what is the existing area where the parking structure is, or the remnants of the torn down parking structure? What is the plan for that?
Sure. So during construction, Bond will be using that as a laydown area, also for their storage of trailers and such. And then during the time of completion of the project and City Hall being occupied, that'll be utilized as a temporary means of parking. And from that point, we'll have to continue addressing that lot.
So there's no real plan for construction for that area?
Not at this moment, no.
It's a particularly tricky site because of the flood zone.
Okay.
Impacts that area. Yeah.
So we're increasing like kind of the budget of the two properties by removing the parking structure. And the plan for that is we're going to work into an agreement with Fitchburg State University to build a new parking structure across the street. And that plan is intended to begin in approximately September 2022, or be completed by September 2022?
So for the budget's not being increased, let me address that. The budget is the same, it's 23.5.
For the
city-
entire project?
For the entire project.
But for
The
the
entire
700 Main Street and for the City Hall itself, we're relocating the money from...
We're using the same...
reallocating the money.
The same money that this council appropriated, 23.5, will stay on that site. In terms of the parking structure across the street, that will be, the size of that parking structure will be determined by the parking study, which is on that MOU, and then a future lease of any kind between the city and the university will be, the contents of that lease will be determined by the parking study and the size of the structure.
And we're anticipating that to be completed 2 years after we
Correct.
complete City Hall?
Yes. That's correct.
So is that completion? That's completion.
Yes, completion.
So approximately 2022. So what are we going to do for parking in the meantime? I mean, now, aren't there requirements for building zoning
So
for
the City Hall...
required amount of parking?
Correct.
How do we get past the
Councilor,
building code?
The City Hall project is in the parking overlay district, so that does not require a set amount of parking spaces per square foot.
Okay.
So that's the first concern that's addressed. The second is, as I said, that between municipal, the FRA lot, and other private stakeholders on street parking, and utilizing the parking study that we'll be doing with Fitchburg State will help determine where employees are parking. During the temporary means of building the parking structure, The on-site parking that you saw on the site plan will be utilized for constituents and visitors. Employee parking will be in the surrounding area.
And how many approximate parking spaces are there
There's-
for constituents and visitors?
Yep, so
to the
there's,
City Hall?
so total there are 62 employees, and then we, in the feasibility study and our projections, 20 to 30 for constituents and visitors. On-site currently will be approximately 20 parking spaces, and then that's not including the on-street parking directly in front of City Hall.
Okay. And so if FSU decides not to pursue the parking structure, do we have a backup plan for the city for actually building and paying for a parking structure?
I don't think it's an if. I do believe the Fitchburg State will be building a parking structure. That's why we're signing an MOU. On top of that, they also have a parking need for the theater block that they're building. So regardless, a parking structure needs to be built.
But if there's no contingency plan for the city of Fitchburg for this?
So again, the Fitchburg State is building a parking structure, and that's why we're signing an MOU, and we have intentions to be parking there.
Okay, so there's no contingency?
No.
Thank you.
Mr. Torigny, you and I have had a similar discussion about contingency plan, and you know, I believe my comment was, we have the Putnam Street garage there that is currently underutilized, received a good amount of work over time. You know, a parking garage, a parking structure like that should be the envy of most main streets in cities such as ours. So we have a parking structure within walking distance as a backup plan. So that's less than 300 or 400 yards walking from City Hall at present. You know, the site I work at, you know, I can walk up to a quarter mile in order to get to my office. You know, I don't think that's always the expectation, and that's certainly not the long-term plan. But I think we shouldn't be concerned that we're going to end up with no option, or that we have a lack of options in the short term. I think we have some existing parking structures that we should be able to utilize. Is that also factored into that?
Correct, Mr. Council President. And also, let me state this, Fitchburg does not have a parking problem. It's understanding where the parking is and how to utilize it properly. So the study that we're conducting, Councilor, we're going to be using to our benefit along with the university to determine those locations.
Wonderful. Thank you.
We didn't point out the number in that earlier kind of parking overview of 900 spaces that were identified on that one drawing.
I'm not saying there's not parking in downtown, it's just the original plan including a parking garage, so.
Right, and again, you know, it was our recommendation that you try to consolidate where you can, and it's great, I think, that the study is being done, because that will help you do that in a more thoughtful way.
Councilor Di Natale.
Mr. President, I see Mr. Bry here. Could he please tell us if they're building a parking garage, since the chief of staff to the mayor has said it 2 or 3 times? Can he confirm that? Are you building a parking structure?
We will be doing some sort of parking structure or some sort of parking facility. Obviously, with the theater that's slated to have somewhere around 1,200 seats, we have to figure out our parking needs. Do I know if it's a multi-story structure? Do I know what kind of structure? No. Do I know we're going to do some sort of parking? Yes.
So you don't need a contingency plan if they're going to build a structure. My second question is the $1.5 million that's been reallocated, which is standard practice in capital budgeting and finance. Where is that 1.5 going with respect to the building? Is it just sprinkled all over, or is there something we're able to do in the facility that we would have not been able to do if we spent it on the parking facility? Do we have any idea? Because I saw the number was like $1.5 million. So what does that allow for flexibility?
The weeds on it. So part of this was simply recognizing the reality of the accuracy of information at a feasibility study versus the accuracy of information when you're going out and measuring and constructing the entire building. And in fact, the square footage of the existing building is somewhere between 10 and 12% higher than it was in the feasibility study. So that translates directly into dollars. So we were either reducing to maintain the budget, or you know, what the city was willing to do was reallocate to actually allow us to maintain equivalency.
So the parking garage that the university will build, the university will own it, correct? Now, if we built a parking structure, what would that mean? We'd be owning it. And therefore, we'd have to spend money every year to maintain it, upkeep it, staff it. I think this is a great idea. The university bears all the costs of maintenance and upkeep, and we don't bear a dime. They just lease us the spaces. So I bet you if you do a net present value analysis on the structure, it will be above and beyond positive, because what we would pay to not only construct it, but maintain it, staff it, and supervise it, far exceeds the cost of what it's going to cost us to lease spaces for our employees. I don't even have to do the math, it's obvious. So it's a great scenario, considering the fact of redundancy, as you stated, gentlemen, about having a parking garage behind the building and one across the street. If Fitchburg State's going to put one there anyway, and the study will dictate what the parameters of that parking will be.
Well, especially when you've got one function that needs parking at night.
Right.
And the other that needs it during the business day.
Right.
So
it's thinking outside the box, which is good to see, and therefore, it's a very good presentation. And I just have one more question, because I'm repeatedly told by those who know a lot more than I do. Are there any plans in this structure to have offices for city councilors? Like, am I going to get an office?
No, you've got this huge chamber.
Can I repeat that? Can you repeat that? Are we getting offices?
No.
We're not getting offices. Oh, I'm shocked. Haven't had offices in a century, but, you know, the wizards of smart out there keep saying we are. So we're not getting offices.
We're not privy to
Wonderful.
that. Yeah.
I don't need one.
Yeah. Okay,
Thank you.
good. Thank you.
Councilor Boishman.
Right. So you mean something on this new presentation you gave us, the big fat book we got in the beginning, the $23.5 million, the big one that had all kinds of different designs. Throw that one out the window, and we're gonna get this new one.
No, not at all. No, this is very much building on that prior study.
Is it? Yeah. But I'm saying, with the other one that we agreed on, the back end was being torn down. The other back end was gonna be torn down. I understood that back end was gonna be, and we were gonna put the Board of Health, and we were gonna put the building department and Bank of America, because they open up at 7 o'clock to 7:30, and we didn't want to open up big City Hall.
Yep.
Counselor, at the time, that had been a concept. Nothing we voted on was the final design of where, how the space would be functionally used, or we had not committed to any options for how the space was used. It was simply, that was a feasibility study and some concepts to give us an idea of how the space could be used.
Actually, in the feasibility counselor, the concept that the building committee chose and essentially the appropriation of funds was determined based on keeping the entire structure and not demoing any part of the structure.
Oh, all right. Now, going back to Marcus and the Fitchburg State University about the parking, now, according to what I have, according to what we got in the mail today and the other day in our package, we're going to pay Fitchburg State $1.2 million. That's a lot of money, $1.2 million, towards for lease.
Counselor, if I may, that was, I personally had submitted both MOUs early on in November because we were fearful of making an agenda to meet with you all. That has since been revised, and you received a new one on Thursday that removes the 1.2. I inserted both 1.2 and/or an option to lease with Fitchburg State. That MOU is outdated, and that 1.2 reference to 1.2 has been removed. It's only lease.
Okay. As a customer, and I own a store, people like to take the shortest route and the easiest way to get into a building, not the longest route. And we're dealing with the customer. That's what we're dealing with. People like me, I'm a customer. I go down there and I pay my bills so the mayor can get an income and we can get an income. So we're customers. And if we're gonna have them park way downtown to the parking garage, an 80-year-old woman coming up Main Street
No.
What's the sense of
I
it?
can address that. The parking structure across, adjacent to the theater block that will be installed will be a shorter walking distance, the parking structure, if it was supposed to be installed behind City Hall. So the distance is actually shortened, and you're correct. The customer likes to park as closely as possible, and we took that into consideration when the mayor spoke with the university.
Oh, they did? You did, Mayor? Oh, they're pretty smart. Now, on the side over there, I noticed on the side where they used to have the old parking area, there's only one way in there. It's going to be for the employees. You're not going to come on Cottage Street because it doesn't show it on that picture up there.
Cottage Street, correct. So, are you talking about the parking lot directly behind the legislative building,
No,
Council?
I'm talking about if you're in the back of the building, to your left.
Yep, we're proposing access to Boulder Drive.
And now, the only access the consumer can go into is going to be through the front door?
Correct.
Correct.
That's it?
Yep. Just like it is now.
That's where all their services are. So
And there's going to be no changes on Main Street? There's not going to be an island in the middle or anything like that? Nothing?
no, we have asked in order to construct the front entrance stair that the curb line be pushed out. We haven't gotten into any detail on that. That's for a later conversation. But the issue that we ran into, and this is really getting back to the historic exterior, is that there was a kind of wedding cake stair in the original building. You could come up kind of three ways. There was no landing at the top of the stair.
Right.
So if we were to rebuild that stair today, we would have to provide a landing, which pushes the whole stair out closer to Main Street. So our hope is that we'll be able to do that.
But we're also looking at the possibility of making Main Street a two-way street.
Yeah, Main Street's wide. There's a lot of room for bike, 2 lanes of traffic.
So you can get 2 lanes on Main Street, am I hearing that right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure I hear. All right, I'm just checking because I don't want somebody to come back to me and say we can't do the two-way Main Street because it's too narrow.
Yeah. No, as Tony says, no surprises. So.
Councilors, I have items 279 and 28018 before you.
Motion to approve 279 and 280.
Second.
I have a motion and second to approve 279 and 28018. Speaking on the motion, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? It is unanimous, motion carries.
Mr. Council President, just one more, and I promise I'll be done. I wanted to mention a couple quick things that we missed in the presentation. The team behind me is truly a Fitchburg team. Icon is the design architect for not only the theater block across the street, but B.F. Brown. Colliers International is the OPM for the City Hall project for Crocker and also the library. And Bond, to my left, has been part of the Fitchburg team long before I was here by building the Antonucci building at Fitchburg State. So all these people here understand Fitchburg, they understand its people and the way they work, and they also care deeply about the projects that we have. The other thing that I want to mention is Rollstone Bank has been a fundamental asset to making this project happen. They are willing, the mayor met with Mr. Connors not long ago, and they're willing to convey a small parcel of land of their park so that we can make this project happen. So I thought that was also important to mention.
And I think along those lines, it's also important to recognize those members of the City Hall Building Committee who came this evening, who have been working almost once a month, attending a meeting for almost 24 months or beyond at this point. So those who are here, if you could just either stand or wave if you're scowling at me and you don't want to stand. So I know the work for this committee doesn't end, and I appreciate all the work that they've put into this point, and look forward to seeing the finished product in a relatively short period of time.
Thank you, councilors.
A motion and second to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? We are adjourned. The regular council meeting will begin in just 3 minutes. Give everyone enough time to clear up. Yeah, right? In 18, I'd like to call the Fitchburg City Council to order. Please be advised that FATV is conducting audio and video recording of this meeting for public broadcast. I would ask that anyone in the audience who is recording this meeting, please identify themselves for the record now by standing and stating their name and address. Is there any such person? Seeing none. Councilor Squalia, will you please lead us in the salute to the flag?
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, would you please conduct the roll call?
Absolutely. President Kuchera?
Present.
Councilor Boishman?
Here.
Councilor Clark?
Here.
Councilor DiNatale?
Here.
Councilor Donnelly?
Here.
Councilor Fleming?
Here.
Councilor Green?
Here.
Councilor Caddy?
Here.
Councilor Squalia?
Present.
Councilor Walsh?
Here.
And Councilor Zarella?
Here.
Public forum. Anyone wishing to speak on any matter on the agenda may do so for not more than 2 minutes. If you are addressing public hearing petitions, you'll have an opportunity to speak at that time. Please approach the center table and identify yourself by name and address for the record and the item number on the agenda which you are addressing. Does anyone wish to speak at this time?
I would.
Chief Martin.
Good evening, councilors. For the record, Ernie Martineau, Chief of Police. I would like to address 2 matters appearing on this evening's agenda. Order number 30818 and 30918, which are set to be referred to the Finance Committee. Because of the holiday schedule, there's a necessity to assess these funds, and for that reason, I'm hoping that the council will consider taking these 2 matters under suspension of rules.
Motion for suspension.
I have a motion and second for suspension of the rules on 30818. Speaking on the motion, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The matter is before you. I have a motion and second to approve 30818. Speaking on the motion, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? It is unanimous. Motion
For
carries.
suspension on 30918.
Second.
I have a motion and second for suspension of the rules on 30918. Speaking on the motion, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The matter is before you.
Mr. President.
Councilor DiNatale.
May I request that the chief
Absolutely.
speak on the Shannon grant?
Absolutely. The second order, it's the Shannon Grant that's referred to, that's the name of it, the Shannon Grant. This is out of the Executive Office of Public Safety. This is a grant that we apply for each and every year. Last year, the city of Fitchburg was awarded $140,000. This year, because of our aggressive grant writing abilities, we were awarded $220,000. Fitchburg Police Department is the fiscal agent for this grant. It's a co-monitored program where we have different partners. A few of our partners are the Elm Street Church, Mock, the City of Gardner. The purpose behind this grant is to identify juveniles that may be just approaching the juvenile justice system and to defer them into different avenues. With me tonight is Captain Giannini. Captain Giannini has been overseeing this grant for the city for the last 3 years. He is much better versed on this grant, so I brought him this evening. If any councilors have any specific questions related to the grant, we receive part of the $220,000, and then the rest of it gets distributed amongst our partners, but we are the fiscal agent and we are the reporting person for this grant. So that being said, if any councilors have any specific questions related to Shannon, I would defer to Captain Giannini.
Councilor DiNatale, you still have the floor if you'd like to speak.
I just wanted to know, Chief, of the 220, how much of that stays with us?
$40,000.
Okay, and what is that able to accomplish, briefly?
We run a variety of programs. Our Junior Police Academy that are held every August is paid for by the Shannon Grant in its entirety. We do mentoring, which when police officers go to city parks and playgrounds, as well as the YMCA and the mock after-school programs, and get to know the kids on a more one-on-one informal basis. We do hotspot patrols, which is more an enforcement activity, and truancy patrol is the last one, where we have an officer go into the schools, talk to the SROs, talk to the administration of the schools. They get a list of students that have truancy issues, and those officers then go out to those homes, try to connect with parents and the students themselves, find out if there's any underlying issues, and get them back into school on a more regular basis.
Do we happen to know what our allocation was last year when we only got 140? What's the increase?
20, just for us specifically?
Right,
I
so-
believe last year we got 28,000, and now we're up to 40,000.
And so with that added 12,000, you're able to expand upon what you have previously
Going to
done?
increase our abilities. One of my favorite parts of this grant is our truancy, because I see that as very proactive measures. We're identifying children that just on the cusp of possibly being introduced into the criminal justice system, and we're getting to them before they get to that point. And we really step our truancy efforts up towards the end of the school year, because when they're in school, there's that safe haven part of it, but once they leave school at the end of the school year, we may lose touch with that child. So our truancy program runs year-round, and we're constantly, like the captain said, we're going into the YMCA, we're making those relationships. Our junior police academy is the envy of many departments across central Massachusetts. So, that's my favorite part of it. And, with this additional $12,000, we're going to be able to do that much more this year. And not so much us, but this added funds to Mark, this added funds to Pastor Steve's group up at Elm Street Church, this added funding to the city of Gardner and what they're trying to do, which is very similar to us. It's going to go a long way. So we're excited that we were able to get that extra $80,000 this year on this grant.
And I just wanted to thank once again your grant writer, Christy, who has been a phenomenal asset to this city. And I mean, eventually I'd like, maybe I think it's in the annual police report, but to the council, but just the hundreds of thousands of dollars she's brought into this city. That there was a grant we voted on a few weeks ago that I believe was for the school safety, and it was reported that, or something of that nature, where it was only one of like 8 in the country.
Correct.
And it was unreal that she got it. So it was, I mean, her work, just want to make it clear, does not go unnoticed by any of us.
Last year was the first year I started putting into my annual report the amount of grants that we're monitoring at this point. So you will see it in this year's annual report. You'll get a precise figure of what we are administering for grants.
Thank you on behalf of through you, Mr. President, on behalf of the council for her efforts, her continued efforts in bringing this money to Fitchburg. Thank you.
Councilor Green.
Again, thank you for the effort on this. And I was just curious if you are seeing an increase or a decrease in our youth gang-related issues at all.
As far as nationally identifiable gangs, it's a fairly dramatic decrease. It's not just the past couple of years, though. It's been going on for several years. Our gang problem in the city has been going down.
Okay.
I mean, can I directly tie it to the Shannon grant? I don't have those statistics.
Well,
but
we
just-
will
but just
definitely
in
tie
general.
it to that, right?
Originally, Shannon was designed because it was addressing gang activity in some of your larger cities. What we're seeing now is we're looking for diversions in order to get potential kids away from the system before they even become gang-related members. And the captain's correct. I mean, on a national level, we're seeing a greater reduction in that type of activity. But the importance behind this grant is the diversion part of it and getting to the youth before they even are introduced into the criminal justice system. Everything that we talk about in our business today is diversion.
And I do hope that the other communities that are impacted by this grant follow Fitchburg as a model, because it is a model of success on how to do it correctly. So I commend you and your team and your officers for continuing to invest in our youth to keep them on the straight and narrow. Thank you.
Councilor Squalia.
Councilor Di Natale largely asked the question I was going to ask, which was related to the increase in funds, but just to generally, again, are we creating any new programs with the $80,000 additional, or are we just adding more to all the existing programs that we've been doing?
Specifically, Fitchburg Police, our portion of the money. We're not adding any new programs. I'd say the only real new thing, and we started it last year, but we're excited to be able to expand upon it, is what the chief already mentioned. Typically, our truancy program only ran when school was in session. Last year, we wrote into the grant some home visits over the summer, but they were limited. And this, the extra money here is really going to let us identify those kids before school year ends and really keep track of them all summer long and keep that connection. And hopefully they go into the school year in September on a much more positive note.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Every other program we've run at a state level is praised, and so we're just expanding what we already have.
Counselor Walsh.
Thank you. I also wanted to echo what Councilor DiNatale said about Christy Fritcher and her grant work, and commend the police department in general. I think that the department is very forward-thinking. They're on the cutting edge of a number of different programs. And, you know, I work in this field, and so, you know, I'm aware of what's going on, and I think that, you know, you're definitely, you know, setting a trend for a very forward-thinking department, so thank you.
Thank you.
I'll just add, you know, all too often when we talk police, we're talking about, you know, a bad situation, or we're talking about, you know, a bad incident. This is one of those great occasions where we get to talk about not only an area where we're doing, you know, proactive policing and working with community and an at-risk population, but, you know, we're, you know, we have a great story. And we're getting national attention. And Captain, the work that you've done these past few years clearly shows that we're getting that attention and that we're moving in the right direction. They don't reward us with $80,000 more if we didn't do a tremendous job last year and in previous years. So, Captain, certainly congratulations with how you've led the team in these efforts. And Chief, yet again, this is, you know, expanding our grant dollars and really allowing us to do more. You know, at every level of the city. So, you know, I think this is tremendous that we get to talk about these successes, and congratulations to you and the entire department. I have a motion and second to approve 30918. Speaking on the motion, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? It is unanimous. Motion carries.
Thank you for hearing this tonight, councilors.
Thank you both. If there are no objections, we'll now hear a report from the Appointments Committee, which met earlier this evening and took up the following: a singular reappointment for the Fitchburg Housing Authority for a term to expire December 1st, 2022, of Ms. Linda E. Byrne. It was unanimous.
Motion for the Appointments Committee report.
Second.
I have a motion and second to accept the Appointments Committee report. Speaking on the motion, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? It is unanimous. Also, if there are no objections, I'd like to now hear a report from the committee as a whole.
Move the committee as a whole report be accepted.
I have a motion and second to accept the committee as a whole committee report. Speaking on the motion, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? It is unanimous. Motion carries. Thank you, councilors. We'll now hear a report from the Committee on Records. Councilor Donnelly.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have reviewed the records and they appear to be in order.
Move the committee on records report be accepted.
Second. I have a motion and second to accept the Committee on Records report. Speaking on the motion, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? It is unanimous. Communications from His Honor the Mayor. There are two such appointment letters. First, for Mr. Dan Mylott as a member of the Board of Registers of Voters for a term to expire April 1st, 2020. And the second for Mrs. Margaret Padovano as a member of the Fitchburg Council on Aging for a term to expire March 1st, 2020. We have one other communication as well from the PERAC, which we placed on file. Now we have a special presentation. Yes.
Would you mind if we took legislative affairs? There's only 2 items. It should be very, very brief.
Of course. I have.
Move the legislative affairs committee report be accepted.
Second. I have a motion and second to accept the Legislative Affairs Committee report. Councilor Boschman.
On the motion, I'd like to pull 274-18.
One second, let me look at it.
It's the,
I'll take it up separately. 274-18, motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and second to approve 274-18. Speaking on the motion.
On the motion, the reason why I asked to pull the committee, I was here and I got here late and I apologize to the committee. But I'm totally against this to go above the quota on these package stores and that stuff. I said, we get a quota list for a reason, and, you know, why are we doing it? I mean, like the man said down there, one of the owners down there, there's plenty of package stores for free. Why are we going above quotas for? We are business friendly. I think we're all taking this the wrong way when we're saying we're not business friendly. We are. But to keep on going above, what are we going to have, a package store in every corner? I mean, really. I mean, I see this, like, when I watch the news on when I see California, and they put them all in one area. I mean, really. And I know, I was here when I heard one of the councilors said something about car wash. Well, let me tell you, there's a big difference between a car wash. There's a car wash where I get outside and wash my car, and there's a car wash where the guy washes my car for me. So it's two different. But this is a package store. But I'm going to vote against it. That's all I want to say. That's it.
Counselor, I will be voting in favor of this, and my rationale was we have a business who's an existing business who's been in the city for over 5 years, had a non-opposition vote from the City License Commission, has been good standing and a good partner in both our business community throughout our city. This is an opportunity to reward someone who's not only conducted business well, but who's been patiently waiting for an extra liquor license to become available, which has not become available in 5 years. The state sets the quota. We don't get to set our individual quota. So, I don't like the idea of the state telling us how many liquor establishments we can have in our city. And I believe that was the crux of the conversation in the committee was, do we really want Boston telling us how many we can have? And do we really just want to be monitoring? Is our role to monitor market industry, or is our role to ensure what's best for the community? I don't see this as being a negative to the community. I see this as providing our customers and our residents with another establishment and another option to choose to do business. And the benefit of this is we've had 5 years to look at this operator. And I see no reason to hesitate in moving forward with this. Speaking on the motion, Councilor Zarella.
In the committee meeting, I mentioned that I don't think market regulation is a good justification for quotas, but that enforcement of a controlled industry, such as liquor stores, is. I indicated that we had no communications that there would be any difficulty in enforcement. Since we do, however, have Chief Martineau here, I'd just like to ask if he foresees any difficulties in enforcing liquor laws against one additional full-service liquor store, which is currently doing beer and wine only.
I wouldn't see one additional as an impact. We refer back to our local licensing board. I would confer if they have no issue with this, nor would I. We work as agents of our local licensing board, and if they're in favor of this, then so would be the police department.
Thank you. That is what I figured was probably the case, but I wanted to confirm for the record.
I have a motion and second to accept 274-18. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? One in opposition, Councilor Boishman. Motion carries.
Move to accept the committee's report on 299-18.
Second.
I have a motion and second to accept the committee's report on 299-18. Speaking on the motion, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? It is unanimous. Motion carries. We'll now return to the regular order of the agenda, which is a special presentation from the Fitchburg Greenway Committee regarding the Recreational Trails Guide. This time I'd like to turn it over to our city's Recreation Director, Nate LaRose. If you could just introduce the folks.
Yeah.
It's just the two of you.
Yeah.
And Mr. Larry Casassa. Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, councilors. As you know, I'm Larry Casassa, a citizen and member of the Fitchburg Trails Vision Committee. And of course, you all know Nate LaRose, the Recreation Director. Nate and I are poor substitutes for Ralph Baker, our more eloquent committee member who chairs our meetings, but who was called away in a family emergency and couldn't be here tonight. I understand that what Ralph's intent was to just give you a quick update on the workings of the Trails Vision Committee. I know he gave a presentation to you quite some time ago, during which time I believe the council endorsed the efforts of the committee. But just to give you a quick recap, we're basically an ad hoc committee that was an outgrowth of the Fitchburg Greenway Committee. It includes representation from private citizens in Fitchburg, city officials, the North County Land Trust, Mass Audubon, and others. We meet every bi-weekly on Fridays. Our next meeting is December 28th. We meet at Can-Am at 9 o'clock in the morning, and everyone's welcome to attend. The purpose for creating this committee was really to try to help better inform Fitchburg residents about the wealth of resources we have in trails throughout the city, and to provide visitors easy access to trail information, both urban and rural trails that exist throughout the city, to promote tourism, economic and community development that result from the availability of a good trail system and information about a good trail system in the city. That's becoming an ever-increasing ever-increasing importance to visitors and to people who are looking for places to settle. Recreation is more and more important to the quality of life to people we're finding everywhere, and so we want to be sure that people understand that Fitchburg is a lot more than an old urban city that has a lot of rural beauty and a lot of trails in its network. And finally, we wanted to improve efforts to maintain trails and to encourage development of new trails where it's feasible to do that. And to, in so doing that, we wanted to improve access to grant funding to help improve Fitchburg's trail system. And I understand we've been successful recently with the Rollstone Walk Trail. So far to date, what we've done is we conducted a public forum and a survey of citizens to determine their needs. We've conducted GPS surveys of many of Fitchburg's trails, and so we've been able to develop good mapping. We've actually completed a trail guide, which is a very rudimentary map, but it at least gives people a pointer to where Fitchburg's trails exist, and it also provides access to more detailed information, which is now posted on the city's webpage through its recreation department, so that people, if they want to go on a hike or a walk, can get a really good-sized version right on their cell phones of the trail that they want to hike on a given day. So we're very pleased about that. We also appreciate the support we've gotten. The work that we've been doing has been endorsed by the mayor, by this board, this council, by the Parks Commission, the Planning Board, and the Conservation Commission. We've also gotten a significant level of staff support from both the Parks Department and the Department of Community Development, and we appreciate that support. Really quickly, what we're working on now is the actual Trails Vision Master Plan, which takes all the information that we've already gathered, the maps, the descriptions, and puts together a narrative of where we've been, where we are, and what we see potentially the future to be. We're hoping to create an action plan for the prioritization of future trail development in the city, recognizing that it's those types of plans that often attract state grant funding. If we can develop such a plan that is ultimately endorsed by the city, that plan would serve as a blueprint for future grant applications to help with the cost of developing trails in the city. And just as importantly, we're hoping to use the momentum we've generated from all the participation we've gotten from all the partners in this process, including Mass Audubon and the North County Land Trust, to develop a trail stewardship committee, a body that will exist after we're finished with our work, which we hope will only take another few months, that will convene the responsible parties for many of the city's trails and work together to develop a volunteer citizen corps that can go out and take care of those trails. A lot of us have been operating independently to try to do that, and it's an overwhelming task to try to do that. And so by working together, we're hoping to pool resources, and we're hoping to identify trail stewards, people who live near a trail, who are willing to take a little bit of ownership and responsibility for that trail. So if we get people who are willing to adopt those trails, people who normally go out on walks, and there's a blowdown of a tree or a branch, those people are going to be thinking about how to maintain those trails. It's something that we've seen done successfully in other communities, particularly in Groton, where citizens just volunteer their time and take care of the trails that are near their homes, and we're hoping we can replicate that here in Fitchburg. So I don't know if Nate has anything he'd like to add that I left out, but that's a general rundown of where we are.
Yeah, I wanted to circle back to the trail guides. They are available online now. We've already actually received some positive feedback from residents who are already using them. So if you would visit fitchburgma.gov/trails, they're all there. They're easily accessible in English and Spanish with PDFs and narratives that describe the trails. They also link out to other trail networks in the area, like the Mass Audubon Society's trail system and the North County Land Trusts, and they have trails that go beyond just Fitchburg as well. We've also worked very closely with the Water Department to include many of the trails that are in the watershed conservation land that the council has been part of engaging with the Water Department to develop further. These guides are available throughout the city already. We've been distributing them for a couple of months now in English and Spanish, which you should have both versions. You can get them at the library, the rec department, City Hall, Coggshall, Johnny Appleseed's Center, as well as I think Mill Number 3 and a few other places. So they are very widely distributed. If you want any yourself, you can visit Community Development, and I believe they do still have a pool available to help disperse further. So this was a lot of great work that was really pushed forward through MRPC, and they did a great job designing this with volunteers and interns. Beyond that, we are in a phase where we have already hiked the majority of trails that we're referencing, and we've developed basic information on their current status and what their maintenance needs might be. However, we do encourage counselors, if you typically use a trail, feel free to reach out to my department with any information you might have or want to include, so that we can make sure that that is developed into our plan as well if there are maintenance needs you think we're ignoring.
I see number 10 is listed as the Twin Cities Rail Trail, which is exciting. I know 5 years ago it still seemed like a far off concept that might never emerge, and exciting to see it already printed. Its construction starts this coming spring, and when do you expect that will be complete?
Well, we are hoping that construction will start during this coming year. It was originally scheduled for this fiscal year, so that originally we had anticipated that the project would have been put out to bid by this time and work would have started this past fall. We're a little bit concerned right now that the project continues to move forward. It's currently with two different state agencies that are responsible for managing the project. The design's being done through the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs, which has done a wonderful job. The Mass Department of Transportation will be actually managing the project and bidding the project. And so we are hoping that they can advance the design stage of that project. There's supposed to be a public hearing and a design public hearing this winter. And it's critical that we meet that time deadline, or we'll actually be looking not at construction in 2019, but potentially 2020. And we're hoping that it doesn't get pushed back that additional year. So that's where we are right now with that. But the funding is secured and it's going to happen. We just want it to be sooner rather than later.
Absolutely. Well, many thanks to the Greenway Committee for all of their work. Tremendous, and thrilled to see this bilingual as well. So thank you again for providing us an update. I know we have counselors with questions. Counselor Donnelly.
Well, I commend you on your work. It's nice that we have a trail map, and I know we're marketing the city. Just casually glancing here, over 10 years ago, there's no more Scripture Road in Fitchburg. And Richardson Road, can't tell you exactly where it ends, but it's called Arnhow Farm Road. If we're, are there any horse trails?
So the networks that we use now don't typically allow horses. None of the public ones do. I believe maybe Mass Audubon doesn't.
Mass Audubon does allow some limited horse usage, but I think that may just be
The reason I bring it up is that some meetings not too long ago, I brought it up, and a former councilor said, where are the horse trails? But with the sections 3, 4, and 5 were probably originally made by the Crockers, and primarily as horse trails. So are bicycles allowed, or No motor vehicles, we know that.
What we're doing for each trail, and what we will have in the master plan, based on who's responsible, who the steward for that trail is, who owns the trail, all of the rules that they have for the trail will be on the Recreation Department's website as well.
So the Crocker land is now held by the North County Land Trust, and it's held as conservation land. And so a lot of their rules are regarding protecting the land for the environment. They do allow dogs, but I do not believe they allow horses anymore if they did at one point.
I thought the upscale communities had horse trails. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming tonight, and thanks for all of your hard work, and please convey that to the entire committee.
Thank you.
Thank you. Turning to the agenda, we have petitions,
Move 31018 and 31118 be sent to their respective
Can you hold
committees.
up 31118, please?
I have a motion to send 31018. Do I have a second? To the Legislative Affairs Committee. Speaking on the motion, all those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? 31118. Councilor Caddy.
I spoke to the superintendent of streets today. He's very familiar with 210 Street. My conversation with him, he'd like to put that granite in as soon as possible. As stated in the petition, people coming down Romano Ave can slide on the ice right across that intersection into that home. And again, the superintendent of streets would like to get this done as soon as possible. Having said that, can we suspend the rules on 21118?
Second.
Suspend the
I
rules?
have a motion and second for suspension of the rules on 31118. Speaking on the motion, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? It is before you.
Move to approve 31118.
Second.
I have a motion and second to approve 31118. Speaking on the motion, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? It is unanimous. Motion carries.
Motion to adjourn. Second.
I have a motion and second to adjourn. I just want to wish the viewing public a safe and happy holiday season and a happy new year. And we'll soon be posting the proposed schedule for the 2019 City Council meetings. That's it. I have a motion second. Announcement, Councilor Boschman.
I would like to wish all my fellow councilors, Mr. City Solicitor, and the Assistant, Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And the City Clerk, sorry, and Mr. Gianni, I already did. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
And I also want to thank our Assistant City Clerk, Amanda Alford, who joined us tonight. I believe this is your first time taking the helm.
It is.
So, successful maiden voyage. So thank you for filling in this evening. I have a motion and second to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you, councilors.